Ron Dayne was arguably the most prolific running back in college football history, as well as the biggest running back bust of all time. A kid who was almost 270 pounds coming out of high school was thought to be too big to play running back at a D1 school. However, not only did Ron end up going to a D1 school, but he also left a legacy at the University of Wisconsin that will never be forgotten. As Ron made the transition from college to the NFL, his once very promising career slowly faded away as his years in the NFL went on. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the career of Ron Dayne and find out why his NFL career didn't pan out. Guys, before we get into the video, I would really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe if you enjoy the content that I put out. Now let's get into the video. Ron Dayne attended Overbrook High School in Pine Hill, New Jersey. And at Pine Hill, he was a two-sport athlete as he played football and did track. Although he would end up choosing football as his pursuit, he excelled at track as well. Ron won the New Jersey Meet of Champions in 1995 and set the meet's record for the discus throw. Then in 1996, he won 2 state titles in shot put and discus and ended up winning the Meet of Champions again that year. Today, he is the 5th best distance ever thrown in the discus by a US high school athlete. But as good as he was at track, Ron felt at home on the football field. Coming out of high school, it was thought that Ron was too big to play running back and would have to switch positions since he was about 270 pounds. But eventually he was promised a tailback spot at the University of Wisconsin and never looked back. Once Ron got to Wisconsin, he earned the starting role his freshman year and held on to that starting spot until he graduated. In his freshman season, Ron had one of the greatest rushing years in college football history. On 325 carries, Ron rushed for 2,109 yards and 21 touchdowns. At that time, Ron's 2,109 rushing yards in a season were the 6th most of all time, so you can say that he exceeded expectations. This season would be his best statistical season at Wisconsin, as in his next 2 years, his numbers slightly dipped, rushing for 1,457 yards his sophomore year and 1,525 yards his junior year. These were still very productive numbers, they just weren't as good as his freshman season. His senior season, however, is the one that most people will remember him for since he won the Heisman Trophy that season. In that season, Ron rushed for 2,034 yards and 20 touchdowns. When Ron had finished his collegiate career, he was a Heisman Trophy winner, a Copper Bowl MVP, a 2-time Rose Bowl MVP, the 1999 Big Ten Player of the Year, the 1999 Walter Camp Award winner, the 1999 AP Player of the Year, and a 3-time All-American. His jersey was also retired at the University of Wisconsin, where his legacy would never be forgotten. Going into the 2000 NFL Draft, the main concern for Ron was his weight, since at the Combine he weighed in at about 260 pounds. However, his lowest 40 time was a 4.5, which is pretty impressive for his size. Ron ended up being taken 11th overall to the New York Giants. Some thought this was kind of a weird pick since the Giants had already drafted Tiki Barber a couple years earlier, but what New York was going for was another back to kind of complement Tiki's game, and for Tiki to complement Ron's game as well. Ron actually started off his NFL career pretty well. In his rookie season, he had 770 yards and 5 touchdowns on 228 carries. But as his years in the NFL went on, his numbers slowly declined. The next season, he had 690 yards and 7 touchdowns on 180 carries, which was slightly lower than his rookie season, but it could have easily been just another sophomore slump. That was not the case, however, as in his next season, he had 428 yards and 3 touchdowns on 125 carries. You can kind of see the decline starting to happen here. His 4th season would be his final season with New York, since he put up a measly 179 yards and just 1 touchdown on 52 carries. I do want to point out that during Ron's time in New York, though he was not very productive, it was not completely his fault. As Ron's carries and production started to decline, it opened a door for Tiki Barber to show what he could do, and he more than took advantage of that opportunity. In the 4 years that Ron was with New York, Tiki ran for 1,000 yards in all of those years except for one. In 2004, which was Ron's last season with New York, Tiki ran for just over 1,500 yards, which was the most out of the 4 seasons that Ron was there with him. So you can see how Ron's production and Tiki's production kind of had that inverse correlation. After that 2004 season, Ron was sent to the Broncos, where his production did not increase. In that season, he had 270 yards and just 1 touchdown on 53 carries, which are fairly similar numbers to the year prior. Then, in the 2006 season, he was sent to Houston, where he seemed to flip a switch. In his first season with the Texans, he put up 612 yards and 5 touchdowns on 151 carries. And then the next season, he slightly increased his numbers and put up 773 yards and 6 touchdowns on 194 carries. Now, these aren't mind-blowing or Pro Bowl numbers, but they are solid productive stats. Ron had seemed to find a role in Houston where he could contribute to the running game and put up pretty solid numbers. But that 2007 season would end up being Ron's last season in the NFL. He ended up retiring and said that he wanted to spend more time with his family and kids since his parents were never around for him. Now, in terms of Ron being a bust, most people immediately point to his weight. And although his weight was a factor, it wasn't the main reason his career didn't turn out the way he wanted. Most people forget that Ron had an insane amount of carries in college. In fact, he's first all-time in career carries with 1,220. And with carries comes production. Any average college football player could put up a good amount of yards with 1,220 carries in their career. The difference is that most college backs most likely could not endure that amount of carries in their career, but Ron could. So what teams should have looked at when scouting Ron is how productive he can be with less carries than he had in college. And that's what I believe most teams overlooked. I think most teams just saw a big power back that would be effective in the trenches. But despite Ron's performance in the NFL, he is and always will be one of the most prolific college football running backs of all time. Guys, that's going to do it for today. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, as that helps the channel to grow. Besides that, until next time.